Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so if you're involved in international baccalaureate education, you know that collaboration is a word you hear, well, constantly. It's essentially the engine of the IB. But what does that actually look like in practice across the different programs? Today, we're going to build a visual infographic together, mapping out the true IB expectations for collaborative planning. We're going to use this kind of cool zoom-in, zoom-out approach. We'll start with the foundational rules that apply to literally everyone, zoom right into the specific requirements of the primary years, middle years, and diploma programs, and then zoom back out to see how leaders actually build this collaborative culture. Let's jump right in.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the core of IB collaboration, define collaboration versus cooperation, break down the PYP, MYP, and DP, and finally, wrap up with building a collaborative culture from the ground up.
All right, diving into Section 1, the core of IB collaboration, looking at the overarching standards.
Now, what's really fascinating here is that the IB doesn't just, gently suggest that teachers talk to each other, they mandate it. According to the IB program standards and practices, specifically Standard B2, schools are strictly required to provide dedicated, scheduled time to design a coherent curriculum. Teachers absolutely must be able to see connections to actually facilitate them in the classroom. And to pull this off, the school has to allocate human, physical, and virtual resources. It's a completely non-negotiable foundation.
Under Standard C1, the IB defines collaborative planning and reflection as a single interdependent concept. Think about that for a second. It's not two separate tasks where you, say, plan on a Monday and then maybe get around to reflecting in June. No way. They are inextricably linked. This standard actually contains 9 core practices that are completely common to all IB programs, and they act as this unified mechanism for continuous improvement to make sure teaching and learning are perfectly aligned.
Let's move right along to Section 2, collaboration versus cooperation, a truly crucial distinction.
So what's the actual difference between collaborating and merely cooperating? Well, cooperation is when you work together for a common benefit, but you firmly maintain your individual ownership. Think of it like dividing up administrative tasks. Hey, you do part A, I'll do part B, and we'll just staple them together at the end. Collaboration, on the other hand, is when 2 more people work towards a shared objective with true co-ownership. You are combining your strengths, your unique skills, and your perspectives to foster a shared vision. The IB demands this deep, creative collaboration to build a coherent curriculum, not just cooperative delegation.
Okay, Section 3, PYP, or Primary Years Program Collaboration. We're focusing on transdisciplinary teamwork here.
Let's zoom in on the Primary Years Program. In the PYP, collaborative planning focuses heavily on building a transdisciplinary community of learners. Planning teams ideally consist of all the teachers teaching students within a specific grade or year level. The ultimate goal? To focus on both horizontal and vertical planning to constantly revise and strengthen the articulation within the program of inquiry. By using officially scheduled meetings and sometimes even adjusting the school day itself to make time for this, collaboration becomes deeply embedded into the very culture of the school. The big takeaway here is that you aren't just swapping lesson plans, you are seamlessly weaving subjects and inquiries together.
And here is where the PYP brilliantly brings students right into the process. You've likely heard of collaborative norms for adults, right? Well, the PYP utilizes what they call essential agreements. These are co-constructed behavior expectations developed with the students, not just handed down to them. They ensure a safe, respectful learning environment and serve as the student-facing analog to those adult collaborative norms. Both the adult norms and the student agreements build accountability through consensus. And they both really emphasize shared ownership. Let's move on to Section 4, MYP, Middle Years Program Collaboration, exploring interdisciplinary connections.
Zooming into the Middle Years Program, you'll notice the collaborative focus shifts a bit. Here, it really acts as the bridge between distinct subject groups. Because the MYP is highly process-driven, your collaboration actually has to yield specific, mandated written deliverables. We're talking about mapping approaches to learning, or ATL, across all years, drafting subject group overviews, and building out those strict MYP unit plans. You also have to collaboratively document your strategies for differentiation. So rather than just a simple checklist, it's about systematically managing your meeting time to bridge these subjects and ensure a beautifully coherent student experience.
Now for Section 5, DP, Diploma Program Collaboration, looking at whole school coherence.
When we zoom all the way out to the diploma program, the expectation expands massively to broad integration across the entire learning community. Now, this is often the most complex level of collaboration to schedule, for sure, but it is absolutely vital to prepare students for their final assessments. There is a huge emphasis on interdisciplinary understanding, specifically integrating theory of knowledge, or TOK, into various subjects so students truly see the connections between disciplines. Then there's whole school collaboration, which pulls administrative staff, librarians, IT specialists, and support personnel right into the process. And finally, student participation is highly emphasized, encouraging students to collaborate with peers and teachers to take a really active role in their own learning journey.
So, let's just pause for a second and look at what we've built here. This perfectly synthesizes our deep dive into one unified blueprint. In the PYP, the focus is transdisciplinary teamwork, using grade-level teams to build the program of inquiry. In the MYP, it shifts to interdisciplinary connections, bridging distinct subject groups using ATL charts and overviews. And in the DP, it expands to whole school coherence, integrating TOK and pulling in the entire school community. This right here is the ultimate infographic of how collaboration evolves as a student moves through the IB continuum.
And finally, Section 6, Building a Collaborative Culture, Moving from Theory to Action.
So, zooming back out again, how do we actually make all of this happen in the real world? The secret ingredient here is leadership. Pedagogical leadership teams, like department heads and curriculum directors, cannot just demand compliance. That doesn't work. As the IB dictates, they are expected to actively mentor learners and teachers. They must deliberately allocate human, physical, and virtual resources to actively support this collaboration. It's really all about fostering a school culture that genuinely values professional development and ongoing improvement.
A vital part of that culture is, of course, reflection. Drawing on some brilliant insights from Edutopia regarding experiential learning, we have this powerful idea. We must transform insights into implications. Whether it's students reflecting on a major project or teachers reflecting on a collaborative unit plan they just finished, the debrief is a bridge to future endeavors. We have to constantly ask, how will these new understandings turn into actionable next steps? Because that is exactly how collaborative reflections build long-term capacity.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. But before we go, I want to leave you with a provocative question drawn directly from our source materials to reflect on your own practice. Think about the planning you do every single week. Is the work you have done to date an example of cooperative design, where you're just dividing up the tasks to get them done? Or is it truly collaborative design, where you share a vision and fiercely co-own the curriculum together? Thank you so much for joining me, and keep collaborating.